Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be on the case of Relisha Rudd, who disappeared from Washington D.C. in March of 2014. If you're new here, hi, my name is Larki. If you're not, welcome back. Thanks for joining me in another video. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Relisha was born on October 29th, 2005 to Shamika Young. She was the oldest of 4 kids and she had 3 younger brothers. She was a 2nd grader at Payne Elementary School, and her mom described her as the type of person that would just light up a room. She was lovable, kind-hearted, and friendly. It's sad because it seems like the brightest people seem to have the hardest lives, and Relisha knew this to be true at her young age. When she was a toddler, her mom was looked into by Child Protective Services, and they found that some of the kids might have been physically abused. They weren't properly fed, they lived in a filthy environment, and they were neglected like medical care. All these complaints were eventually dropped, but in 2012, Relisha's father, who was also the father of her oldest brother, filed for sole custody of his children, but it was denied and he was only allowed visitation rights. Unfortunately, the hard times for Relisha didn't end there. In 2014, Relisha and her family, which consisted of her mother and her younger brothers, had been staying at a homeless shelter at the old D.C. General Hospital. Now, this shelter had a reputation for being filthy, it had a lot of crime, and it was infested with pests. I couldn't find how long they had been staying there. This was a hard time for the kids, especially Relisha. When she was at school, she would ask if she could stay later. And she was in an after-school program, so even then she would ask if there was any possibility that she could just be there a little bit longer. And she would also often ask if she could stay at like other relatives' homes, like make up excuses, or like maybe sometimes just act like she was sick just so she could stay with her relatives instead of being at the shelter. While at the shelter, a 51-year-old janitor by the name of Khalil Tatum befriended Relisha and her family. He would bring Relisha gifts like a tablet or a manicure, and Relisha's family referred to him as her godfather. They even spent time alone together, and sometimes this consisted of sleepovers. On February 26th, Shamika asked Tatum if he could take care of Relisha because she wanted her to be able to escape the conditions of the shelter. Soon after Relisha was in Tatum's care, she started accumulating a lot of absences at school, and her teachers started to notice. And you know, with school, there's a certain amount of unexcused absences that you can get to before the school starts asking what's going on and they have your family looked into. And this was the case here because eventually the school did reach out to Shamika to ask her what had been going on and why Relisha had been missing so much school. At the conference, they tried to come up with solutions for how to reduce her absences, and they gave her some information on some support services that she could use. But Shamika was able to calm down the staff, and she basically said that Relisha had been missing school because she was sick and she was under the care of a Dr. Tatum. The school staff was a little confused because they noted that the times Relisha was at school, she was well behaved and quiet. They hadn't noticed any signs of her being sick or anything like that. There were reports of Relisha being present at school on March 5th and on March 7th, but the last confirmed sighting was on March 1st. Since the school was told that Dr. Tatum was caring for Relisha, they reached out to him on March 10th to get official documentation for her absences. Tatum said that he had been treating Relisha for neurological problems and she would be discharged by the end of the next week. On March 13th, Relisha reached her 10th unexcused absence at school, although her brothers had been attending school regularly. The school reported Relisha's family to the Children and Family Services Agency, but they didn't consider her case high priority, so it wasn't until almost a week later, on March 19th, when a social worker reached out to Tatum to schedule a meeting for that day. Tatum didn't show up to the meeting, so the social worker decided to just stop by the shelter to ask around and see if Relisha had been seen, if anything about her family. While there, they found out that Tatum wasn't a doctor and he was actually a janitor. They also found out that that day, Tatum had left work in a hurry before his shift was even over, so the social worker contacted the child abuse hotline as well as the police. By this point, they also found out that Tatum had a criminal record, and he had also been interacting with other young girls in the shelter, but he never interacted with any of the younger boys. The shelter also had a no fraternization rule, so if any employee were to break this, they would immediately be terminated, but Tatum was never disciplined for his actions. When authorities first asked Shamika where her daughter was, she said that Relisha and Dr. Tatum were at a medical conference in Atlanta, Georgia, which they had left for on March 8th, and she didn't know exactly when they would be back, but that she had last talked to Relisha on March 17th. Any calls to Tatum's cell phone went immediately to voicemail. They stopped by his apartment to see if Relisha was there, but there was no one anyone home. And even with all this information, Shamika was very adamant about not filing a police report because she believed that Relisha was safe. The police didn't have a good feeling about any of what they were uncovering, so they began an investigation which officially started on March 19th. I saw some reports that said that from this point on, everything Shamika was saying was very inconsistent. Like, for example, she said that Relisha had been in Dr. Tatum's care. But then some other reports say that at this point she started saying that Relisha had actually been staying with her grandmother. So Shamika's mother, which was Relisha's grandmother, and Shamika started pointing the finger at each other, basically saying like, no, she was with you, no, she was with you, this is your fault, no, this is your fault, you were supposed to be taking care of her. And they just started going back and forth, and everything was very inconsistent. The very next day, on March 20th, authorities found Tatum's wife, Andrea Tatum, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Her body was found in a motel room of the Oxon Hill Red Roof Inn, and a warrant was immediately issued for his arrest. In an effort to generate more tips, the FBI released surveillance footage showing Tatum and Relisha walking into a room at a Holiday Inn Express in D.C. on February 26th, and this was the day that Shamika let Tatum first take Relisha. They also found that on March 2nd, Tatum had purchased 42-gallon contractor trash bags, a shovel, and lime, and was seen spending time around the area of Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens. So on March 27th, the police centered the search for Relisha around this area. While searching Kenilworth Park, on March 31st, police found the remains of an adult male. These remains were later confirmed to be those of Khalil Tatum. Tatum was dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. After finding Tatum's body, one of the theories that police looked into was the possibility of Tatum killing Relisha and then burying her body in the park. So the search for Relisha was focused in the Kenilworth Park as well as the Anacostia River and the tunnels in the now closed DC shelter. The search for Relisha has continued after all these years, and the family just wants answers. They want to find out what happened to Relisha, whether she's dead or alive in the present day. There have been other theories that people have thrown out that Relisha could have possibly been a victim of sex trafficking, but as far as like anything concrete, no one has ever been charged in the disappearance of Relisha Rudd. I'll put more information on Relisha Rudd's disappearance down in the description bar. And if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload. And I'll see you guys in my next video.